Heavy snow is hampering rush hour traffic in the capital area this evening. Up to 8 centimeters of snow are expected in most parts of the country and over 10 centimeters in Gangwon province. A new division in charge of economic security is created under South Korea's presidential office amid related emerging challenges. Samsung Electronics last year looks to have recorded its lowest operating profit in more than a decade as semiconductor performance remains weak. It's January 9th, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We begin with heavy snow blanketing the entire country. The central regions have been especially hit hard, prompting the issuance of heavy snow advisories. For more, let's connect live with our reporter Song Yujin, who is at one of the busiest areas of Seoul during this time. Yujin, it's now the evening rush hour. What's it like there?
Well, Tomin, I'm currently at Gwanghwamun Square in central Seoul, and as you know, it snowed all morning, but then at one point in the afternoon it stopped. It snowed again, and right now it's snowing a little bit after it stopped for about an hour, but the nation's weather agency predicts that capital Seoul will get up to 7 centimeters of heavy snow by tomorrow, and most parts of the country 8 centimeters, but in some parts of the country, for example, Gangwon province, it could see up to 10 centimeters of heavy snow. Now, in response, the nation's Interior Ministry has activated its Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters Level 1, which is the lowest of its 3-tier system. Now, this basically means the swift removal of snow and monitoring the weather conditions. The ministry has also upgraded its 4-step snow alert level from the lowest interest to the second lowest caution. Now, currently, with lots of people heading home from either school or work, the streets are bustling with commuters bundled up, clutching their umbrellas, and treading very carefully due to the amount of snow on the sidewalks. So let's first take a listen to what some of these people had to say.
It's hard to see snow in Busan, so it's kind of cool to see the snowfall in Seoul.
Maybe to be a bit cautious about slipping because the floor is very wet and slippery. But
Why it looks cold and slippery out there. Eugene, what's the cause of this sudden heavy snowfall and how long is it expected to last?
Well, all the snowfall is because of a snow cloud belt originating from the West Sea. It's currently moving to the southeast of the country. And because of this, the weather agency predicts that the capital regions will see snowfall by tonight and most parts of the country by tomorrow morning. But in certain coastal regions of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces, snow may continue until tomorrow afternoon. So for safety, using public transportation is highly recommended. But if you intend to drive or if you have no choice to, it's really important to drive slowly and keep safe distances from other vehicles. And if you have snow chains, using them are also highly recommended. Also, of course, tune in to the latest weather updates, bundle up, and be careful when you go outside because the roads and the sidewalks here are really slippery, Tomin. That's all I have for now. Back to you.
All right. Thanks, Eugene, for the updates. To stay safe out there. Shifting gears, the nation's top office has added a new economic security division to tackle a growing list of supply chain and industry-related issues that affect South Korean livelihoods. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young has the details.
South Korea's National Security Council has established a new division focusing on economic and cybersecurity. On Tuesday, President Yoon Suk-yeol's office said the nation's top security body created a third deputy position to, quote, take a more organic and systematic response to complex security crises. This comes as Seoul addresses a growing range of new emerging threats to national security, affecting the livelihoods and safety of South Koreans beyond their traditional security concerns posed by North Korea. With supply chain disruptions becoming commonplace, along with fierce global competition to master core and emerging technologies, gaining economic security and a lead in science and technology determines both economic prospects and military capabilities. The Yoon administration over the past year has focused on building cooperation in supply chains for minerals that are critical for future technologies, as well as research and development in defense and other strategic industries. Under National Security Advisor Chang Ho-jin, Principal Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Tae-ho will continue directing pressing issues in foreign affairs and security, as well as the overall policies of the National Security Council as its Secretary General. Second Deputy Advisor Lee Seong-an will focus on national defense and military issues and oversee the national crisis management system. The new third deputy, expected to be appointed in the coming days, will take over emerging security issues. On top of supply chains, export controls and nuclear power plants, two secretaries will assist with policies to promote cooperation on core and emerging technologies, as well as technology protection and the field of cybersecurity. Yoon's office says revamping the council to address such issues is expected to contribute to improving the competitiveness of Korean companies and stabilizing people's livelihoods across the export-dependent economy. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
South Korea's military is planning on resuming artillery drills on land and at sea after it declared there will no longer be buffer zones on the inter-Korean border. When asked whether this means termination of the military pact with North Korea, the Defense Ministry said consultation is needed. Our defense correspondent Chim Min-jo explains.
The South Korean military recently announced that the buffer zones set up along the inter-Korean border are no longer effective following North Korea's continued artillery fire off its western coast. The buffer zones were set up in 2018 when the two Koreas signed an inter-Korean military agreement to halt hostilities near the border. First, on the ground, a 5-kilometer buffer zone was established in the north and south from the military demarcation line. Here, artillery fire and regimental or higher-level field maneuvers were suspended. In the maritime buffer zone at sea, all coastal and naval artillery as well as maritime exercises were banned. In the air, a no-fly zone banned aircraft from flying within 20 kilometers of the MDL in the western section of the demilitarized zone and within 40 kilometers of the zone in the east. For the first time in 6 years, South Korea last week conducted artillery drills within the maritime buffer zone in response to the North's artillery firing. The Defense Ministry on Tuesday revealed plans to resume artillery exercises in the buffer zone on land as well.
As you know, due to the September 19th military agreement, there were restrictions on large-scale regiment-level maneuver training and artillery fire training within 5 kilometers from the MDL. So there were some limitations in establishing a readiness posture in border areas with frontline units. I believe that such issues will be resolved and each unit will be able to train in better conditions.
However, when asked if the abolition of the buffer zone means the termination of the inter-Korean military pact, the ministry said this is an issue that requires necessary consultation between relevant ministries.
The Defense Ministry seems to be responding to North Korea's provocations, while the government is thinking there's no need for us to be the first to destroy the military pact, as it's already dead.
The expert added that it would be difficult for Pyongyang to pose a direct threat as long as the South Korean military remains on high alert. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The country's lawmakers passed several special bills this afternoon, including a bill providing the basis for the launch of a new space agency. Also passed was a ban on the consumption of dog meat. Our National Assembly correspondent Ishikawa reports.
Lawmakers at the National Assembly's plenary session on Tuesday approved special bills that will establish South Korea's new space agency and that will ban dog meat consumption in the country. The special act for the establishment and operation of a new space agency passed with 263 approvals and 3 abstentions. The new space agency, which the Science Ministry has dubbed the Korea Aerospace Administration, or KASA, is expected to launch in Sacheon, Gyeongsangnam-do Province as early as this May. The agency will carry out research and development, policymaking, industry promotion, international cooperation, and more in the field of aerospace. In response to the bill's approval, President Yoon Suk-yeol said South Korea has taken a great step toward becoming a major space power. Meanwhile, the so-called Dog Meat Ban Act passed with 208 approvals and 2 abstentions. It prohibits all processes of dog consumption, including the breeding, slaughtering, and selling of dogs. Punishment for slaughtering dogs for consumption will be up to 3 years in prison or a fine of up to around $23,000. For the breeding and selling of dogs for eating, offenders could face up to 2 years in prison or fines of up to around $15,000. There will be a grace period of 3 years to allow for related businesses to prepare for closure. And there will be further support for those currently in the industry so they can find stable economic activities. Ishikawa, Arirang News.
And the main political parties have agreed to hold an extraordinary National Assembly session from next Monday to February 8th. This follows the conclusion of the current extraordinary parliamentary session. The ruling People Power Party and the main opposition Democratic Party also agreed to convene two plenary sessions on the January 25th and February 1st. Eyes are on whether contentious proposals on the special probe into First Lady Kim Gon-hee and the so-called Daejangdong 5 billion won club will be brought to a revote after President Yoon vetoed them last week. Preliminary earnings calculations by Samsung Electronics point to the company's lowest annual operating profit in well over a decade last year. This was because semiconductor performance remained weak, but the outlook for 2024 looks different. Park Gon-woo has more.
South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics saw its lowest annual operating profits in 15 years in 2023. According to preliminary data revealed by the company on Tuesday, operating profits came to 6.54 trillion won, or around $5 billion, a drop of 84.92% from the year before. It's the lowest that yearly operating profits have fallen since 2008. An expert explained about the reasons behind the fall in profit.
The drop was due to shrinking chip demand for IT products that led to excessive supply and price drops as the global economy worsened last year.
Samsung's Device Solutions division that manages its chip business saw a cumulative deficit of approximately $9.1 billion from the first to third quarter last year. Operating profits started to improve in the fourth quarter due to a reduction in production and chip inventories. Meanwhile, despite on-quarter operating profits for previous quarters last year, the fourth quarter saw a drop compared to the previous year. In the fourth quarter alone, operating profits fell around 35% compared to the year before, to around $2.1 billion, falling short of the London Stock Exchange Group's smart estimate of around $2.8 billion. But the expert forecast a brighter future for the chipmaker in 2024.
Expect an earnings rebound from the second and third quarter due to a surge in chip prices seen since the fourth quarter of last year, as well as higher foundry orders.
He said he expects the company to see improvements by the second and third quarters. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
We are counting down to the hours the world's largest trade show in Las Vegas. The Consumer Electronics Show marks its 58th edition this year, and according to organizers, artificial intelligence is headlining this year's event. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young has a preview.
The world's largest tech show, the Consumer Electronics Show, where visitors can be among the first to experience global tech trends, is about to kick off in Las Vegas on Tuesday local time. Under the theme of All Together, All On, this year's trade show focuses on using innovative technology to tackle global issues. The combined exhibition area covers a vast space of over 240,000 square meters, a 30% increase from last year. Some 3,500 companies from 150 countries are taking part. From South Korea, around 760 companies, including startups and major players like LG Electronics, Samsung Electronics, Hyundai Motor Group, and SK, will showcase their latest cutting-edge technologies. This makes Korea the third largest country in terms of participation after the US and China. At CES 2024, AI developments in a variety of fields, including home appliances, healthcare, and automotive, are expected to take center stage. Ahead of the opening, South Korea's tech giants unveiled a range of next-generation TVs. LG Electronics presented the world's first wireless transparent OLED TV, the LG Signature OLED T. When turned up, it's practically invisible, blending into the surroundings and making the space feel bigger. and you can see beyond the screen and move it freely thanks to its transparent screen and wireless technology. It is complemented by top-notch picture quality and LG OLED, powered by the new Alpha 11 AI processor. Samsung Electronics revealed its latest QLED and micro LED TVs. The announcement also conveyed plans to open what the firm calls the era of AI screen, with the introduction of a next-generation AI processor set to redefine the perception of smart display capabilities.
Samsung's AI screen is powered by on-device AI technology. We will be the centerpiece of your AI home, connecting all your devices to offer more flexible and diverse lifestyle, with no boundaries on or off screen.
With curiosity about how AI will break down barriers in various industries, the 4-day event is expected to attract over 130,000 people from around the world. 신하영, Arirang News.
Korea's current account posted a surplus for the 7th month in a row in November amid expanded exports of chips and cars. An Sung-jin has more.
South Korea's current account balance for November last year saw surplus yet again on the back of improving exports. According to preliminary data released by the Bank of Korea on Tuesday, the current account balance saw monthly surplus for the 7th consecutive month, with the surplus for November standing at $4.06 billion. The goods account saw a surplus of $7 billion in November, nearly $2 billion higher than the month before, as exports saw strong performance and imports fell. Exports saw an on-year increase of 7% on the back of an improvement in the semiconductor industry and a recovery in trade with China.
Automobile exports continued their strong performance, and semiconductor exports saw a hike, recording a 10.8% on-year increase, the first on-year increase since July 2022.
In terms of region, exports to U.S. rose by 24.7% compared to the year before, while exports to both Japan and Southeast Asia increased by 11%. Imports fell by 8% compared to the previous year on a drop in fossil fuel prices. Meanwhile, a services account which tracks the inflow and outflow of business services, tourism, and transportation recorded a $2.13 billion deficit. The widening deficit compared to October is largely attributed to fewer tourists from Southeast Asia and China, combined with more Koreans traveling and spending money abroad. The accumulated current account balance surplus from January to November last year is $27.4 billion, which is $300 million more than for the same period in 2022. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
The nation's pension payouts are going up. The Ministry of Health and Welfare says that pension payments are going up by 3.6% starting this month, in line with the rate of consumer inflation from the previous year. With the increase, old age pension recipients who receive an average of 620,000 won as of November will now receive around 640,000 won, or around $488. Starting in July, both the upper and lower thresholds for the standard monthly income used to calculate pension premiums will also go up. In the Middle East, an Israeli strike has reportedly killed one of Hezbollah's high-ranking officials. This amid fears of war escalation beyond Gaza. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
Hezbollah says one of its top-ranking commanders has been killed in an Israeli attack in southern Lebanon. Lebanon state media said Wissam Tawil, who is considered one of the most prominent figures in the Lebanese militant group, was killed in an Israeli airstrike that targeted a car that the commander was in. According to AFP, Tawil had a leading role in managing Hezbollah's operations in the south of Lebanon. However, Israel did not comment on the attack, but it did say it had hit Hezbollah targets in response to cross-border attacks. Regarding the war in Gaza Strip, the office of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a joint statement from both the Prime Minister and Defense Chief Yoav Gallant, where the two stressed that the war there would not end anytime soon and that it would continue for many months. They also called for international support in order for them to continue the fighting in Gaza. Speaking to the New York Times, Israel Defense Forces spokesperson Daniel Hagari said its military has begun a new, less intensive phase in its war against Hamas in Gaza. He added that the new phase means fewer ground troops and airstrikes. The comments came hours before U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Israel to discuss the transition to the next phase in fighting and preventing the conflict from spreading. Meanwhile, Blinken sent a message of warning to the Houthi militants in Yemen, saying they will face consequences for continued attacks on ships in the Red Sea. Blinken told reporters Monday in Saudi Arabia that some 40 countries have called on Houthis to stop their attacks. The top American diplomat also made stops in Turkey, Greece, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates in quick succession before his visit to Israel. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Over in Japan, the number of people killed in the New Year's Day earthquake has risen to 180 as of Tuesday afternoon. Officials in Ishikawa Prefecture say more than 120 people are still unaccounted for, while more than 3,000 in the Noto region remain isolated. Search and recovery crews are sifting through the city of Wajima near the quake's epicenter. Japan's meteorological agency is warning of possible quakes over the coming month with upper 5 or more intensity on Japan's 0 to 7 seismic scale.
The whole country is turning white with heavy snow today. A heavy snow warning was issued in Seoul as up to 10 centimeters are expected until late at night. Let's take a look at how the radar looks at the moment. With snow clouds affecting Seoul and Gangwon province, snow warnings are expanding around the central and northern regions. Since the afternoon, snow has become thicker and more regions are expected to have snow. Until tomorrow, up to 20 centimeters of snow is in the forecast for the mountainous areas of Gangwon province. Inland areas of Gyeonggi-do province, Chungcheongbuk-do province, and the Gyeongsang-do province will see up to 15 centimeters of heavy snow. Extra caution is necessary on icy roads. Tomorrow, Seoul, Chuncheon, and Daejeon will start off at -2 degrees. Highs in Seoul, Chuncheon, Gwangju, and Gyeongju, 6 degrees Celsius. Snow and rain will move away later tonight in Seoul and other areas from tomorrow morning. There is no severe cold spell for the time being. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session is coming up.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's my make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
제주도에 처음에 놀러 갔을 때 새롭게 가자했다고 얘기로 나와봤는데
할게요. 스트릿 사진 한 장이었는데 혼자서 좋은 건축가를
한국인들만의 마음들이
같이 갈래요?
Hello everyone, welcome to Within the Frame. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. From a North Korean defector to a full-time professor, the boy who had to suffer hunger in Cheongjin in North Korea's Hamgyongdo province has now been giving lectures on diplomacy to university students. After 2 attempts to get away from the reclusive regime, Professor Kim Sang-yeol was able to settle in South Korea and get a chance to learn. It was not an easy task to pass qualification exams, graduate university, get a master's degree, and receive a PhD. But his aspiration to study eventually made him become the very first North Korean defector to become a full-time professor at a university here. What made the boy from North Korea escape the regime to survive? And as a professor now, what does he think about current tensions on the peninsula? Within the Frame invited that very professor to share this unbelievable story. Professor Kim Sang-yeol from Busan University of Foreign Studies. Welcome, Professor Kim.
Hello.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, Professor. As far as I know, this September you were named a professor at Busan University of Foreign Studies. And this makes the first time that a North Korean defector became a full-time professor at a university in South Korea. How do you like it so far?
I like the campus and students in the university, but the journey was not easy to achieve this goal. I had to push myself, make a short and long-term strategy to be a professor. So now I teach understanding of international politics and inter-Korea relations, and also U.S. foreign policy.
All right, I see. Professor Kim, I'd like to know more about your life. As far as I know, you tried twice to defect from North Korea. Before you first crossed the Tuman River to China, I'd like to know how your life was in North Korea. What made you desperately, wish to escape from the regime?
We lived in northern part of the country, the city of Cheongjin in Hamgyong province. And I had actually a good memory with my friends and relatives before the economic crisis broke out. We went to fishing and we went mountain and we played a lot of good things. But after the economic crisis broke out, many people started to suffer from the crisis. And we couldn't survive because of the economic crisis. At the time, the country's distribution system was collapsed, and all the people were panicking. So one of the ways to survive was to escape the country. So the first time we escaped the country was a survive purpose. So we heard at the time, that if we got to China, we could fulfill our stomach. So my mom decided to escape.
So it was mainly because of the hunger?
Yes.
I see. So you went to China and you stayed there for around 3 years until Chinese police called your family. And then later on, you were deported back to North Korea, and you were put in jail before being released 3 months later on. Were you able to witness any severe human rights violations? And how rare is your case of eventually being freed from the jail?
As I mentioned that we got to China, we could fulfill our stomach, but we had to face 3 difficult things. First one is repatriation to the country, and second one is human trafficking, and the third one is labor exploitation. So we tried to avoid repatriation, but I was hired in Chinese company, and I was working at night, and suddenly, Chinese police came to our place and arrested me because I was illegal North Korean refugee living in China. And they sent us to, I actually met my mom and my sister at the police station, and we were sent back to North Korea. North Korean, the Department of Security Department started to investigate our case. And they asked us 3 questions. Did you meet South Korean or American or go to church? So we answered, none of them were our business. And they put us in a labor camp. It was, and in the labor camp, I started to think that where's government for us? Where it was the government's obligations? Because, you know, economic crisis was not our fare to deal. It was the government's the failure to deal with the crisis. So from that moment, that was my turning point of my life. I decided to disagree with the political groups in North Korea and disrespect leaders in North Korea. And I decided to escape again in the prison.
So you began to question whether North Korean government, or should I say the regime, was doing its job correctly and properly. And since the answer was no, you decided to escape once more. Right.
I perceived the North Korean regime was not
doing its job properly.
The political groups for the people inside DPRK.
Right, I see. So after you were set free, you escaped the regime yet again, went to China, and then settled in Seoul in 2005. Were there any specific reasons behind your settlement in Seoul?
So second escape was a political decision for me. And when I got to China, I was hired by Chinese Christian pastor. He was also entrepreneur. And I helped him to doing his business. And I was staying in church, actually, and I gradually becoming a Christian. And I suddenly have something that I have to study. I have to learn something, right? Because my teenagers just, you know, escaped North Korea and sent back to North Korea and then worked in a, you know, construction work environment. So I started, I need to go to college. I need to study something. And then at that time, I heard the South Korean government is supporting us, allowing us to enter the country and then supporting us to go to university. So I tried to look how to get to Seoul. And then I met a broker in Beijing. He helped us to cross the border between China and Mongolia. And eventually we made it to a South Korean embassy in Mongolia, and they helped us to come to Seoul.
I see. So you really wanted to study, and that's the reason why you came to South Korea. Interesting. Well, I'd like to ask more about your education then. I was quite surprised to hear that you passed qualification exams for elementary, secondary, and high school in just around a year. You graduated university and even received a master's degree and also PhD as well. What motivated you to study like that?
As I mentioned, my teenagers I wasn't able to go to school, right? I didn't have any chance to learn. And also, North Korea has the problem that educational poverty and also educational gap. People who live in Pyongyang area, they have opportunity to apply universities, but people in different, you know, region, they don't have a chance. But I believe there's a lot of talented young people, but they don't have a chance to learn. So I got to Seoul. I was fascinated by all kinds of philosophy, history. I couldn't imagine in DPRK. So I started studying, and then when I taking international relations theory, I was fascinated, and I started interested in the unification of Korean Peninsula. And then I started the unification studies, but I had to learn bilateral or multilateral relations between Korean Peninsula and other countries such as United States and China, Russia, and Japan. So that's how I started to learn international relations. And I actually finished my master's program abroad, but you know, the study never ending. So I continued to study and now became a professor.
I see. Well, like you already mentioned, you were fascinated by the international politics, and maybe that was the reason why you chose that as a major. But I'd like to ask you more about how, if there was any specific area that you wanted to do the research on.
After I explored the unification of Korean Peninsula, I thought that Korean Peninsula is pretty much influenced by international politics, and also division of the Korea is influenced by, Russia and United States and other. So Korean's division is subdivision from the Great Division, which was called war. So we are living in a divided region as well. So I have to study the international politics and to look at relations between those dynamics and how to find out golden knot to cut and contribute myself for the unification.
I see. You had to know the dynamics regarding the Korean Peninsula, and that is the reason why you chose this international relations. Right. Well, Professor Kim, we have been talking about who Professor Kim Sung-yeol is as an individual. Now I'd like to ask you several questions as a professor of university. Last year, North Korea successfully launched a military spy satellite and also 5 ICBMs. What do you believe is North Korea's intention behind such provocations, and to what level do you believe North Korea has developed such nuclear weapon systems?
I think Kim Jong-un has doctrine for the country. He announced in 2013 he's going to achieve nuclear power and economic development at the same time. And in 2015, the regime fired Hwasong ICBM and declared they already had achieved nuclear power. And then at the beginning of 2018, the regime started to have a summit, consecutive summit with South Korea and United States for the economic development. But at the beginning of 2019, the summit between United States and North Korea in Hanoi, no deal was, North Korea didn't, both sides didn't have a deal. From that moment, North Korea still trying to, I think Kim Jong-un still trying to how to develop its country's economy. So he is trying to close tie with Russia and China or other Middle East countries, which is like anti-American bloc. And within that bloc, he is trying to get an economy development, but still, because he has to get this justification for ruling the country. Because inside the PRK, many people don't believe he is a leader if he failed to develop its economy.
I see. He needs that justification by developing economy right now.
But in terms of ICBM technologies, I think as long as we don't have engagement policy with North Korea, North Korea continue to develop its technology and the number of nuclear weapons. So we call it vertically and horizontally, the country trying to build up its capabilities of nuclear weapons.
All right, I see your point. Well, Professor Kim, experts forecast that North Korea is going to continue with such provocations in order to boost leverage before the U.S. presidential election begins. Is there any possibility North Korea would even go ahead with the 7th nuclear test this year?
Possibly, North Korea is going to launch the 7th nuclear test and ICBM, because both could be the negotiation agenda if Trump wins the election. Right. Because Trump and Kim Jong-un have built trust confidence. And they had exchange letters in 2019, 27 letters between two sides. So I think there will be a possibility both leaders to meet again and to negotiate whatever, maybe a peace regime or give up the nuclear weapons, something like that.
So you see the possibility of North Korea going ahead with the 7th nuclear test in order to make it into a negotiation card with Trump?
But basically, theoretically, actually, a state, the critical purpose is to survive. So Kim Jong-un has to test nuclear, test an ICBM because it's internally for solidarity of the country, and then externally he's trying to deter, extended deterrence from South Korea, United States, and Japan. So that's the instinct of the leaders' choices.
Right, that's your point. Well, Professor Kim, we cannot leave out North Korea's human rights violations. And I assume you know better than any of us because you were actually in jail after you were caught by the Chinese police and was deported. What is the status quo regarding this human rights violation situation in North Korea?
I saw a man was killed by electronic shocks, and a couple of women were targeted forcibly abortion. But we were put in a labor camp. But these days, Kim Jong-un put these people in political camp who got caught and sent back to the DPRK. That's the difference, my time and now. And political camp, there's two kinds. One is the 10-year education camp. The other one is permanent camp. So Kim Jong-un tried to put those who are trying to escape the country. So I think the human rights violations is getting serious in the PRK. Also Chinese government cooperate with Kim Jong-un. I heard, you may see the news recently, Chinese government has sent hundreds of North Korean refugees to the country. And they are facing, serious consequences. So the South Korean governments bring this issue to UN and ask Chinese government to obligate the Convention of International Refuge in 1951. But Chinese government they reject that kind of efforts by South Korean government.
Well, you see, Professor Kim, the international community has kept putting efforts to, improve the human rights violation situation in North Korea. I mean, UN General Assembly even passed the North Korean human rights resolution for the 19th consecutive year as well. But no meaningful progress has been reported yet. What further international efforts do you believe should be put in order to tackle this issue?
I think one of the best ways to tackle this issue is to identify the perpetrators and then their occupation and their family members and also the places where human rights violations going on. And these issues has to be reported to UN. We call it naming, shaming strategies. So I think international UN and also human rights NGOs should focus on this work. Also, on the other hand, the South Korean government should establish North Korean Human Rights Foundation according to North Korean Human Rights Act in 2016. And we record all kinds of human violations inside the PRK. I think that's the one way we have to do right now.
All right. Thank you for your suggestion. Well, Professor Kim, last year, South Korea showed a great strategic clarity aligning with Washington and Tokyo more than ever. How did you see such a diplomatic direction, and what kind of diplomatic strategy do you believe the Yoon administration should deploy for this year?
I think, at the Camp David, United States, U.S. and Japan and South Korea get together for the security dialogue. But that was not the first time the U.S. tried to make a triple alliance. U.S. actually tried to make this NATO in the beginning of 1950s, which is similar to NATO. But at the time, South Korean government didn't agree to join the alliance because, Japanese colonization of Korea. But after over 70 years, I think the U.S. achieved the dream to, close tie with the three countries. The reason they're doing this is that the rule-based international order is being threatened by Russia and China and other terrorist groups. I think we can just identify the authoritarian regime and versus, democracy regimes. So, and also Yoon's administration foreign policy doctrine is to keep democracy values. So I think Yoon administration continue to join the Trial Alliance and enhance them, exchange information, and also deploy, U.S. Strategic assets in Korean Peninsula. But theoretically, diplomacy is not an ideology. Diplomacy, you have to think about national interests. So the art of ambiguity is good strategy to maintain.
All right, ambiguity could be a great strategy. All right, well, Professor Kim, we are running out of time, but I'd like to ask you this last question. What are your goals and ambitions as a full-time professor, and what message would you like to give to your students?
As a professor, I continue to reading and teaching, and I do like to write articles, meaningful articles and books. And I do like to say to my students, be positive and courageous to break through all kinds of difficulties we are facing now. And on the other hand, I do like to help the North Korean refugees, including abroad and in South Korea, and also want to those who living in abroad, but they don't have a South Korean citizenship. I encourage them to apply, to come to South Korea, to pursue better life. So I'm going to write a book about my story.
Really?
Encourage them to come to South Korea, and also I'm going to create a homepage. I put the contact information and my story, and let them see how to come to South Korea or the United States, freedom countries.
All right. Well, I'll look forward to your website and your book, Professor Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today's edition. Thank you, Professor Kim, for your time and insights. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that's all for Within the Frame tonight. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.